Self-development with tactics. So, today we're gonna go ahead with Awareness by Anthony de Mello. And we're gonna go ahead with chapter Waking Up. So it's probably, well, let's call it chapter 3 or part 3, Waking Up. And then we're gonna talk about spirituality and maybe as well spiritual greed. It depends on how fast I am and how well things work today. Anyway, you want to wake up. You're putting on a great act and you don't even know it. You think you're being so loving. Ha! Whom are you loving? Even if your self-sacrifice gives you a good feeling, doesn't it? I'm sacrificing myself. I'm living up to my ideal. But you're getting something out of it. But you're getting something out of it, aren't you? You're always getting something out of everything you do until you wake up. The first thing I want you to understand is if you really want to wake up, is that you don't want to wake up. The first step to waking up is to be honest enough to admit to yourself that you don't like it. You don't want to be happy. It is difficult. And sometimes I also think, well, being in this mad mood, and always being in a, actually shitty mood and always being the angry person, the villain, it is very easy, I do not have to just, basically use my energy up for trying to be happy and trying to be just nice and trying to be whatever. Like, to some degree, I gotta have to agree, I don't want to be happy. Even if it just sounds stupid and maybe this is even the way to go. Like, not trying to be happy to be happy. Anyway, the second step is a readiness to understand, to listen, to challenge your whole belief system. Not just your religious beliefs, your political beliefs, your social beliefs, your psychological beliefs, but all of them. Understand that maybe you've got the wrong ideas and it is these ideas that are influencing your life and making it the mess that it is and keeping you asleep. Ideas about love, ideas about freedom, ideas about happiness, and so forth. And it isn't easy to listen to someone who wouldn't challenge those ideas of yours which have come to be so precious to you. We don't want to look, because if we do, we may change. We don't want to look. If you look, you lose control in the life that you're so precariously holding together. And so, in order to wake up, the one thing you need the most is not energy or strength or youthfulness or even great intelligence. The one thing you need most of all is the readiness to learn something new. The chances that you will wake up are in direct proportion to the amount of truth you can take without running away. How much are you ready to take? Want to wake up? You want happiness? You want freedom? Here it is. Drop your false ideas. See through people. If you see through yourself, you will see through everyone. When you will love them, then you will love them. Otherwise, you spend the whole time grappling with your wrong notions of them, with your illusions that are constantly crashing against reality. Enlightenment, to wake up. When you're ready to exchange your illusions for reality, when you're ready to exchange your dreams for facts, that is the way you find it all. That is where life finally becomes meaningful, life becomes beautiful. That is what enlightenment is. Like when someone tells you, there is nothing you can do about it. You say, there is. I can wake up. All of a sudden, life is no longer the nightmare that it has seemed. Wake up. Part of waking up is that you live your life as you see fit and understand this is not selfish. The selfish thing is to demand that someone else live their life as you see fit. That is selfish. It is not selfish to live your life as you see fit. Nobody was mean to you. Somebody was mean to you, mean to what he or she thought was you, but not to you. Nobody ever rejects you. The only one rejecting they're only, I'm sorry, rejecting what they think you are. But that cuts both ways. Nobody ever accepts you either. Until people come awake, they are simply accepting or rejecting their image of you. They're fashioned an image of you and they're rejecting or accepting that. See how devastating it is to go deeply into that. It is a bit too liberating. But how easy it is to love people when you understand this. How easy it is to love everyone when you don't identify with what they imagine you are, they are. It becomes easy to love them, to love everybody. Well, yeah, people do have just a certain picture of who I am. And this may or may not be me. And this becomes quite clear when you're talking to people and when they talk about their thoughts about you, when it comes to teachers, and them being like, I always thought you were those very hardworking person, and whatnot, but indeed, this is just not the case. This is just how things seemed to be for this person. Period. And that is quite it. This is just their picture, their point of view. It's not yours. It's not what reality really is like. And I think this is just the thing we need to do as well. Seeing what reality indeed is. And well, as he before was talking about, it probably is all about observing things and questioning things. Okay, do I really have to do this? Is this really meant in this way? Should I really be doing this? And by questioning your whole life, I guess one can come to a certain conclusion, and or I think that you could just also fashion a certain picture of your life that you like, and period, and also of yourself. If it is the reality or not, well, does it matter? Not really. Do you know one sign that you have woken up? It is when you're asking yourself, am I crazy or are all of them crazy? It becomes increasingly interesting, but I still don't grasp fully what what the whole thing is all about. Anyway, so it's like, I do understand that it might be a very complicated topic to talk about and one actually can't describe it in words, which may or may not, I'm not quite sure, be something that he has also said, that it is just something that you can't verbalize. But still, difficult. Spirituality. They didn't teach me how to live at school, they taught me everything else. As one man said, I got a pretty good education, it took me years to get over it. That is what spirituality is all about, unlearning all the rubbish they taught you. Spirituality means waking up. In psychology, more practical than spirituality? Nothing is more practical than spirituality. What can the poor psychologists do? He can only relieve the pressure. I am a psychologist myself and I practice psychotherapy, and I have this great conflict within me when I have to choose something, or sometimes between psychology and spirituality. Psychology and spirituality, as we generally understand it, transfer the bomb from your lap to under your seat. They don't really solve your problems, they exchange your problems with other problems. Has that ever struck you? You had a problem, now you exchange it for another one. It's always going to be that way until we solve the problem called you. When I speak to Hindus, I tell them, your priests are not going to be happy to hear this. Notice how prudent I am this morning, but God would be much happier, according to Jesus Christ, if you were transformed than if you worshipped. He would be much more pleased by your loving than by your adoration. And when I talk to Muslims, I say, your Ayatollah. Is this, I just know Allah, or Allah, I guess, I'm not quite sure. Might also not be, well, might be Arab, and the same thing, anyway. And your mullahs are not going to be happy to hear this, but God is going to be much more pleased by your being transformed into a loving person than by saying, Lord, Lord. It's infinitely more important than you be waking up. That you be waking up. That is spirituality, that is everything. If you have that, you have God. When you worship in spirit and truth, quote unquote, when you become love, when you are transformed into love. Spiritual greed. When you attain and when you are aware, increasingly you will not be bothered about labels like awake or asleep. One of my difficulties here is to arouse your curiosity, but not your spiritual greed. Let's come awake. It's going to be wonderful. After a while, it doesn't matter. One is aware because one lives. The unaware life is not worth living, and you will leave pain to take care of itself. Are you going to substitute one greed, a spiritual greed, for the other greed? Before you had a worldly ego and now you've got a spiritual ego, but you've got an ego all the same, a refined one and one more difficult to cope with. When you renounce something, you are tied to it. Note, I've also seen this called spiritual narcissism. Some people see awareness as a high point, a plateau, beyond experiencing every moment as it is. That is making a goal out of awareness, but with true awareness, there is nowhere to go, nothing to achieve. How do we get to this awareness? Through awareness. When you people say they really want to experience every moment, they are really talking awareness, except for that quote-unquote wanting. You don't want to experience awareness, you do or you don't. When someone is, well, this is actually a pretty good point, you know. When someone is, and well, you can want it, but probably when you want it, you are not doing it. So indeed, yes, in the end, it boils down to you are doing it or you aren't. When someone is anxious about being aware all the time, you can spot the mild anxiety. They want to be awake to find out if they are really awake or not. That is part of asceticism, not awareness. It sounds strange in a culture where we have been trained to achieve goals, to get somewhere, but in fact, there is nowhere to go because you're already there. The Japanese have a nice way of putting it. The day you cease to travel, you will have arrived. Your attitude should be, I want to be aware, I want to be in touch with whatever is and let whatever happens happen. If I'm awake, fine. If I'm asleep, fine. The moment you make a goal out of it and attempt to get it, you're seeking ego glorification, ego promotion. You want the good feeling that you've made it. When you do make it, you won't know. We must always be aware of making worship just another distraction from the important businesses of life. And living doesn't mean working in government or being a businessman or performing great acts of charity. That isn't living. Living is to have dropped all the impediments and to live in the present moment with freshness. Maybe I should actually read the book, the full one. Might definitely be worth doing, I guess. As it probably is for quite everyone. While probably knowing that it isn't easy to read, it's not easy to go through, maybe not easy to grasp, and certainly not easy to work with, but one can try, at least. Ignorance, fear, conflict, and evil. The mystics, saints, and others make great efforts to wake people up. If they don't wake up, they're always going to have these other minor ills like hunger, wars, and violence. The greatest evil is sleeping people, ignorant people. The only tragedy there is in the world is ignorance. All evil comes from that. The only tragedy there is in the world is unwakefulness and unawareness. From them comes fear, and from fear comes everything else. Some say that there are only two things in the world: God and fear. Love and fear are the only two things. There is only one evil in the world: fear. There is only one good in the world: love. It is sometimes called by other names. It is sometimes called happiness or freedom or peace or joy or God or whatever, but the label doesn't really matter. And there is not a single evil in the world that you cannot trace to fear. Not one. As the life of awareness settles on your darkness, whatever is evil will disappear, whatever is good will be fostered. You will have to experience that for yourself. Nobody does wrong in awareness. That is why theologians tells us very beautifully that Jesus could do no wrong. That makes very good sense to me, because the enlightened person can do no wrong. The enlightened person is free. Jesus was free, and because he was free, he couldn't do any wrong. But since you can do wrong, you are not free. Maybe you... Well, one could say, if I'm killing somebody, is this wrong? Well, certainly, according to law, it is wrong. Is it fully, entirely by nature wrong? No, it isn't. You know? And this kind of leads to a thought like, am I crazy or are they crazy? According to this, with this example, I'd say I'm crazy, you know, because, well, I understand it, I know it, but I also know at the same time that, well, when we would start killing each other again, you know, for fun or whatever, humanity wouldn't last that long, you know. On one hand, good, you know, decreasing the population. On the other hand, like, fear, a ton of fear. There is a difference between knowledge and awareness, between information and awareness. I just said to you that one cannot do evil in awareness, but one can do evil in knowledge or information when you know something is bad. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I would translate that as, they are not aware of what they're doing. You do not need effort. That is why people are so tired, so weary. You and I were trained to be dissatisfied with ourselves. That is where the evil comes from, psychology. We are always dissatisfied, we are always discontented, we are always pushing, go on, put out more effort, more and more effort, but there is always that conflict inside. There is very little understanding. The root of evil is within you. As you begin to understand this, you stop making demands on yourself, you stop having expectations of yourself, you stop pushing yourself, and you understand. Yes, indeed, also something that I've seen with me and myself, that quite often when one pushes oneself, you know, and really tries to go to this certain place, then it is difficult, takes a ton of energy, takes a ton of time, takes a ton of brain power. But sometimes, if you're just doing things as you just do things, you know, things work out quite fine. And we, by living in a certain world that we constructed, can let things seem quite dangerous, bad, negative, whatever you want to call it, just through imagination. And by thinking about it as something bad, something evil, you know, we just often create things. We often create our boundaries, our own boundaries, and well, I do want to underline there is certain physical limitations that we just have, you know. Some of us are not going to be NBA professional players. It's just not going to be the case. Maybe, well, you know, one could specify that. You could be a professional basketball player, maybe in some other league, maybe even in the NBA if you really train hard. And if it is the only thing you can focus on and will focus on for the next 10 years, maybe you'll get there. Who knows? I don't know. But it really depends on your genetics, really depends on who you are, really depends on your, well, genetics in terms of height, by the way, and also athleticism. If you're just not an athlete, you're gonna have a really, really, really hard time. Don't necessarily want to say that you're never gonna get there, but I don't know if one can bring up the effort to do so. Anyway, do you know where wars come from? Or actually came from projecting outside of us the conflict that is inside. Show me an individual in whom there is no inner self-conflict, and I'll show you an individual in whom there is no violence. There will be effective, even hard action in him, but not hatred. You don't need conscience when you have consciousness. You don't need, or is it conscience? I don't fucking know. Sense of right and wrong. When you have sensitivity, you're not violent, you're not fearful. A Jesuit once wrote a note to Father Arup, so Arrupe, his superior general, asking him about the relative value of communism, socialism, and capitalism. Father Arup gave him a lovely reply. He said, "A system is about as good or as bad as the people who use it. People with golden hearts would make capitalism or communism or socialism work beautifully." Which leads to one saying, okay, I think that capitalism is good. At this point in time, one has to reevaluate things. Are those people that are practicing capitalism, which is, by the way, just a word that describes something, are they practicing it in a good way? Do I like that? You know, which entirely is up to those people that are doing that. And it is just a label once again. Like, I'm also white. It's just a color, a word that we made up a few years ago. You know, maybe a few hundred, maybe a few thousand. I don't actually know. Years ago. It's just a label. Like things. I don't know. Like it's interesting. Anyway, gonna end the episode there. See you soon. Bye bye.